I'm live. I'm live again. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Um, I am excited to be back again for another chapter, episode, or whatever we want to call it. I have had a lot of fun doing my series on my experiences as an adopted person, and today, today's episode has had me thinking a lot, and it's something that um, I have a lot of history with this particular topic today. And not all of that history is very positive. And when I tend to think about it, it's not necessarily very healthy for me, I suppose. At least that's what I've decided for now. So um, let's put it this way. I've had so much fun doing these videos that I tend to think about them days in advance and like, what am I going to say? And do I want to talk about this or maybe discuss that? And so I think about it when I go to bed at night. And occasionally, when I think about things before I fall asleep, I tend to dream about them. And that has led to some, um, it's not good. It's not good for me to dwell on these things. And so I thought, you know what, it would be best if I just get this episode out there and share it with the world and move on to something else. Because this, of all the videos, I think this is not the one that's going to make me cry, but that's later. This one is, it's probably the hardest for me to do. So, coffee break. It's coffee time. I've really enjoyed doing my videos in the morning and just spending a half hour doing these and having my coffee with you guys. So hopefully you guys are enjoying that too. Thank you, by the way. I'm still getting messages and some email from people that are on their own journeys. So if I haven't got back to you yet, I think I've got everybody now. But continue to send those in to me if you want to, and leave me messages here, or let me know if there's anything else. You can comment on the videos below, and I will do anything that I can to help anybody that's on their own journey that has questions. So, like I said before, if I had that in my own journey, it might have made me feel a whole lot better about a lot of things, just even to know that somebody else was kind of on the same path, or what they were experiencing, or what worked or what didn't, and those kind of things would have been extremely helpful to me. And that's what I hope to provide to other people in the future. So thanks for stopping in, and I hope you're enjoying the series. So here we go. Let's talk about this. I put a cute little picture, a little thumbnail picture, and funny story about that little picture. It comes from a Dr. Seuss book that's called Are You My Mother? And you may be familiar with that one if you're into Dr. Seuss, or read those books when you're a kid. Oddly enough, that's one of the only Dr. Seuss books that I didn't have when I was a kid. And I think it was on purpose, because my adoptive parents did not think that was a good subject for me to worry about. And they were very controlling about my emotions and how I should feel about being adopted and not knowing who my biological family was. It was one of the ways, they probably had good intention, but it was one of the things that I see now as being maybe not. Maybe I would have enjoyed that book as a kid, and just kind of finding the humor in the little bird situation and how everything turned out well in the end. Maybe that would have been better. But we all say things about that, like with our own childhood and things, and what happened, and maybe this would have been better, that would have been better, who knows. And sometimes I feel like that's not for us to decide. So anyway, Are You My Mother? We're going to talk about the times in my life when I finally felt like I had found a person that I wanted to reach out to and ask them if there was any possibility that we had a biological connection. There's my puppy. And he's actually my office manager. So let's talk about that. The first time, actually, and this might be surprising to some people, and pardon me, I'm just pulling up and making sure that I can see my own chat. There we go. Just in case I have anybody that pops in to my live. Okay, let's talk about it. I'm putting it off, aren't I? Let's do it. The first time that I actually confronted someone and asked them if they were my biological parent was actually within my own family. And if I have any of my adoptive family left that is still interested in this story and following along, watching these videos, because they are public, they may be interested to hear this story. Some of them already know it. And to be honest, I don't have that many family members left in the adoptive family. So not to hurt anybody's feelings, of course, but this is an event that was the truth to me. This is what happened. So when I was probably about 11 or 12 years old, that's when I was struggling, actually, probably the most in those years, those tween years, just trying to find out who you are and those kind of things. I think that was probably a normal age range to be going through those kinds of things. And one of the things that we did is we made a trip across the country, very far away, to visit some aunts and uncles and cousins that lived way back east, and I'm over here in the Pacific Northwest. So it was fun, and it was good to be able to get and go and visit and get to know them. Living so far away, it's weird to have family members like that. You don't really get to know them well because you're not around very much. And of course, back in the day, we didn't have social media or email or anything fast like that. We only called during the weekend hours when the phone bill wouldn't be so high. Oh, back in the day. So at any rate, what happened, long story short, was that for some reason, there was a particular cousin that I just adored. And everyone used to compare us and say, "Oh, don't you look so much alike?" And I don't know whether it was wishful thinking or if it was just I don't know, just trying to look for things that weren't there on my family's part. But a lot of my family, my parents, my aunts and uncles, and some of my other cousins used to say, "Oh yeah, you guys look exactly the same. You look like you could be sisters instead of cousins." And I never saw that. I just didn't look at her and say, "Wow, I look like this cousin of mine." And it seemed like utter nonsense to me because it didn't make any sense whatsoever until I was playing with my cousins and we were just kind of goofing around. And cousins had, one of the older cousins was a boy and said something along the lines of, "Well, maybe you really are her sister and her parents gave you up at birth because they didn't want any more kids. They came from a bigger family." And all of a sudden, my little brain, being 11 or 12 years old, just took that and I really went off with it. And I feel really silly about that now, of course, like you do when things happen to you when you're a kid. But I took that and I ran with it and I thought about it and I thought, wow, maybe this is true. Maybe I really am their sibling and not their cousin. And maybe that's why we look alike. And maybe that's why maybe my aunt Bobby didn't want me for whatever reason, and she gave me to her brother. And I truly went with that, and I did eventually ask my parents. I just came right out and asked them. I was like, "Did I come from here?" And they laughed and they thought that was hilarious, and they thought, "Oh, where do you get these ideas in your head?" And that was actually kind of it was a painful experience because they really made me feel like I had done something wrong for wondering those things, for one thing, and then really put me down about it and really squashed. And they didn't see that underlying all of that was just this desire to be looking, to be finding, and to be asking these kind of questions. I think they could have been maybe a little bit more concerned about that. other than me. It became kind of a big joke, and that was hurtful. So yeah, there was that. That was my very first experience of trying to find out who my biological family or biological mother was. And that kind of, it didn't really set the tone, because I didn't give up, if that makes sense. I went ahead, like I've discussed in previous videos. I went on my journey of trying to discover, and I did all the things that I did, and I started with the internet and all these other things. And it wasn't until I was about 40 years old, I was working, and I have a few good friends in my life that I've discussed all of this stuff with before. And just by chance, completely out of nowhere, one day, my friend came to me and said, "You know what? Um, I just found out that there was an adoption within my own family. And I really feel like you should talk to this lady who is not related to them, a wife of a cousin of a sister, way up like in the family." But the thing is that they gave me this lady's information, and I looked at it, and she had the same birthday. She did have the same birthday. It matched with my mother, my biological mother. And they told me stories about her and how they knew that there was an adoption somewhere in there, that it was one of the things that the family whispered about. Um, Here, there, and everywhere. Nobody seemed to know where to exactly to find this lady. And I did see a picture of her, because the friend's family member, and they had a yearbook and showed me her picture in a yearbook. And I looked at that picture and I thought, mm, maybe I can kind of see myself in those eyes. And she looks kind of familiar. It's not really the right hair color. Could have been bleached blonde or something like that. But the demographics, everything else matched up pretty closely. She lived and she worked on a reservation nearby, which was one of the big things, because that was in my paperwork that my mother worked on for the Bureau of BIA, Bureau of Indian Affairs. So I did know that. I did know her birthday, and that matched too. I did know that this lady had some siblings, and so I kind of went with that, and I thought, wow, this really could be something. And so I set about to find her, and I did. I did find her. She lived in the same state still, but several hundred miles away. And she actually worked in the same profession as me, which was another, like, you look for those little signs and things when these things occur, and you're like, ta-da, bing, it's got to be. I thought, she works my same profession. She still lives here in the state. She's still, this is her birthday and everything else. And so I sat about, I wrote her a letter. I wrote her a letter, and I included the photocopies of the paperwork that I showed last week and all of the information. And I just kept it kind of short and sweet, but I'm like, look, I'm looking for my biologicals, and I see that you match this information. Would you be interested in talking to me? Thanks for your time. How do you go about writing a letter like that? Oh boy. And if you find yourself having to do that, and you want someone to help you to look over that letter, oh Lordy, I wished I had somebody to look over that letter with me, because I just stressed and I rewrote it a million times before I finally felt good about sending it off. And I did, and I had to send it through the mail, because I had no email address. I only had a physical address, and then I waited. Um, and people that know me in real life will tell you, if you have to describe somebody in a couple words, one of the words that people use to describe me consistently throughout my life is patient. I have the patience of Job, and I will wait through anything. And I think that is actually one of those things that they could be called. They say how your best traits are really a toxic attribute or something about you, because it comes from a place of trauma. Oh, isn't that interesting? I learned that in therapy one day. And it's probably true. That could explain away why I am so endlessly patient with things, is because over the course of my life I have learned to be so incredibly patient, because I've had bigger things that I've had to wait and wait and wait and wait for, without letting that affect me emotionally or mentally. Guess what it did? And so I waited, and several weeks later, I did get a letter back in response. And I remember getting that letter out of the mailbox and holding it and just being in this state of wanting to open it, but not wanting to open it, and just being so excited, and also at the time not having someone to share that with that was really excited for me or anything. Um, and that's kind of a big part too. And I opened the letter. Long story short, the lady wrote back and she was like, "I'm so glad to hear from you. I'm excited to hear about your journey, and thanks for sharing that information with me." And she said, "You're right. There is an adoption in my history, my story." She says, "But I am the adopted child." Isn't that interesting? So she was an adopted child herself. So she knew everything that I was going through. And she thanked me for reaching out, but she's like, "No, it can't be me. I didn't have a child, but I was an adopted child too." And so instant heartbreak over that. And I felt dumb, and I felt stupid, and I felt all the emotions that you do when you get really excited for something and then it doesn't happen. And it was so profound at the time. And I look back and I realized that several weeks of my life had gone by where I had let a lot of other concerns go, because I was so focused on this answer and waiting for this answer and waiting for this reply, that that's all I had worried about for several weeks. And it had been detrimental to other areas of my life. And um, I see that now. And I told myself then that I would not let that happen to myself again. And also that I would not let myself get into that hyper hopeful state, because I really thought I had it that time, and it was really, really difficult when it didn't come true. And so it was nice. I did send her, I think I sent her another reply, and I just said, "Hey, sorry, my bad. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it." And she was nice. I never heard from her again, and that's fine. Um, but it did give me a lot to think about and plan for for the next time. Mm. Although I didn't try again. In fact, I stopped looking for a couple of years because of that event, because of that big letdown, because it was a letdown of such magnitude that I felt like I'm not sure I can go through this again, if that makes any sense. It was true. So a couple of years later is when I did decide to do the ancestry DNA thing, and that was kind of like a last shot for me. I thought, "Oh, it can't hurt. I guess I'll go ahead and do it." And I went ahead and I spit in the tube and sent it off and got my results. And it was right after my birthday. And I logged in and I looked on the ancestry website, and there were no immediate matches. I got some third cousins and some distant cousins and some and that was back in the day when it did not match your um, parental. I hope I'm saying that right. There's a thing that Ancestry DNA can do now that tells you whether the DNA is on parent one side or parent two side. So you can see your father's side and your mother's side of the DNA. Or like with your matches, you can tell which side they belong to. Didn't have that. So it's just this huge mishmash of like 300 distant and third cousins and things like that. And I thought, "Oh, this is going to be a nightmare to muddle through." And so I just kind of set it aside again. And I said, I can't let myself get that hopeful again. I can't let myself get into that much anxiety about finding this. And I'm just going to let it be for a while. So I did. I let it be for a couple years. And then all of a sudden one day I got a hit a first cousin. So when you're on Ancestry, what you can do is you can build yourself a tree, a family tree, and you can put, if just in case you've never seen it before, I'm sure probably maybe some of you have. Each person is represented by a little square that looks like a playing card. I like to draw. So you've got yourself, right? And then you've got two cards that represent mother and father, and then above those, you've got grandma and you've got grandpa on both sides, and so on and so on and so on, and each card is a person: grandma, grandpa, dad, mom, me. And cousins, of course, are going to be siblings to these ones. And well, let's see. Okay, so these are your parents. These would be your aunts and your uncles, and then your cousins are down here on the same line as you. So all it takes is for you to be looking at the cards as players in the game, and you put one card in the right place, boop, and it just explodes in all of these people that you really are related to. All of a sudden, the second and third cousins make sense because you can see their tree coming down off of your tree, distantly, as being related to great grandparents and great great grandparents and things like that. So that's all I needed was a first cousin, and I got that one day. And because I found my first cousin, I knew that one of her parents must be my biological mother or father, right? So the questions all of a sudden become much easier to answer, and that was really exciting. So from there, and I could go into this into greater detail, but I don't think it's really that interesting. What I did is I reached out to the cousin. She didn't respond right away. She didn't know that I was leaving messages on Ancestry for her. So I looked her up on Facebook. That's exactly how I did it. And I was able to, let's see, trying to remember how all of it worked out exactly, because it went so fast in my head. It was one of those times when I was in the mode of focused looking, mentally preparing myself for failure again. But that's not what I found. Immediately, I found her mother, and immediately I found her mother's sister, and they happened to be twins, the same twins that were mentioned in my paperwork. And then I knew that those were the twins on my mother's side of the family, and that it must be their sister that is my mother. So of course I'm just deep into this now, and I'm using my search engine, and I'm using Facebook and social media and all kinds of things. And it only took probably, like, if it was slow motion in my head, but I think that if I were to go back in and really pay attention to the time, it was probably less than 2 minutes that I did click, 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 and I found my aunt. My aunt is a big social media user, and she has posted pictures of the family gravesite, and they're in her photo album on Facebook, which is public. And the family gravesite includes the graves of my grandparents and my biological mother. There it was, right in front of my face. And it was a gravestone, and it had her full name, and it had her birthday. And immediately when I saw that, I was this bizarre combination of so elated and relieved to find it finally after all of these years. Here she is, but also that she was passed away, and not terribly long passed away. It had been less than 20 years. Although she passed away quite young. She was 53 when she passed. And I suppose that as I have grown older, I have always had in the back of my mind that that was a possibility, and that possibility grew more possible every passing year. I'm not going to find her before she dies. I'm getting older. She's getting older. Our chances are less and less that we're going to be able to meet up and find each other before one of us goes. so so I guess I did have that realization and that possibility in my mind. But to actually see it there in a photograph was quite sad. It was quite sad for me and distressing. It was a bummer. But I found her. So and then from there it was actually like a small pain to see that and that I'd missed her. But the thing is that I still had so much desire to get to know who she was and what did she do and what was she like. And to me, it was just as happy to find that her sisters were there. Okay, she's got a couple sisters, and she's got a brother, a brother, and three sisters. Right, so immediately I started to figure out how am I going to reach out to these siblings? How am I going to reach out to these cousins and my biological mother's siblings, the aunts and the uncle? So I thought about it for a while, and I went through the same stress. And when I tell you I didn't sleep, I didn't sleep for days probably, because I was so excited to finally be able to reach out. And there was no doubt. There was no doubt in my mind. I mean, everything that was in the social media history was exactly on my paperwork. And so I had, there was no reason to doubt at all. I just needed to know how to reach out to these people and tell them. And how do you do that? Surprise. Surprise. So that was really, really, really hard. And again, if this is something that you are facing as a watcher, you're in this process or in this step, or you feel like you ever want this information, I will gladly be of help to you if there's any way that I can, in doing so, because it is a lot to think about. And I do kind of wish now that I had maybe done things a little bit differently. And I do feel like um, this is a hard one, you guys. This is really hard. I do feel like I could have been a little gentler, maybe. It's a lot to think about. You never really, I never really thought about what it would be like to be on that other side of things and just tootling along, doing my work, working my 9 to 5. And I come home and I sit down to relax for a minute, and I grab my Facebook and I open it up, and there's a message from a stranger that says, "Surprise." And you had no idea that there was someone out there in the world that shares your DNA that wanted to get some answers. So unfortunately, I mean, there's really not a gentle way to go about doing this. You can try to be as gentle as you can, and you can try to be as respectful as you can, and you can try to be oh, it's hard. It's hard because your first instinct is you want to just glomp them and say, "Tell me all the things and tell me all this stuff." And you're just so excited. I'm so excited, but they may be like, "Wait a minute, hold the phone. What's going on?" And so it was really, really, really hard. And it was really, really difficult. It was a difficult time for sure. And like I say, if I had it to do all over again, I probably would have, but there was an urgency there that I'll explain to you guys next time when we talk about that. I did reach out to my biological aunt. I did. She was the first one that I found. It was the one that has all of the photos pictures, all of the photos posted to social media with the graves and the things like that. And so that's how I opened the conversation. And I said, hey, um, my name is this and I live here and I'm searching, and I sent copies of my paperwork. Again, I always did that. And I was able to find your photographs with those dates on the graves. And I said, I feel like they really match the information on this paper. If you want to take a look at it and let me know what you think. And if that is the case, then you would be my biological aunt, and I would love to have conversation with you and get to know you. And that's how that went. That's how it went, and it was pretty immediate. It was only a few minutes that I sent that message, that I got a Facebook message reply, and it was one of those of I was lucky. I was really lucky because she was open to this idea, although very surprised. She was like, wait, wow, what is, and we started having conversations and phone calls about this information. And I even got to meet and talk with her husband, and 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 that was it. It was her and her husband, I think I talked to, was all. So we did schedule some phone calls, and we got together and we talked together over the phone. Immediately, I do feel like there was uh, some initial questioning about, is this some kind of a scam? Because although I've never been scammed in that way, I can't imagine what I would do. People reach out over social media, and just drop into your DMs or whatever they call it, uh, for all kind of weird reasons these days, right? And wouldn't that be a weird way to try to scam people, is by saying, hey, I'm your long lost relative. Although I'm sure they wouldn't have the kind of paperwork and stuff that I have to back up that claim, that makes it very obvious. And the DNA, okay, the DNA test that's on Ancestry DNA. I'm like, look, this gal, her DNA is on my Ancestry website. We match, we're first cousins. And I sent copies of that and everything else. And they're like, oh my goodness. So there wasn't really any question. There wasn't any need for further testing or anything. And there wasn't any other cause for concern there. So I was lucky. I had somebody to talk to immediately, that listened to my story, that confirmed a lot of what I was saying. And then she started to share some stories with me about my biological mother. I'll do an episode on her all by itself. I can't wait to share what I've learned about my biological mother, but that is the way that I contacted the family. Now, I underestimated the level of excitement that this would cause in a family, or not cause in a family. I think that's how I want to word this. After speaking with my biological aunt and her husband, I knew that she had several children and other siblings, 2 sisters and a brother, right? And there was a misunderstanding of sorts, I believe, in that I thought biological aunt had told everyone in the family about our conversation and what we had found, because she talked about them, and she said, oh, uncle is going to be so excited to hear about this, and so is this aunt, and so is this aunt, and so are these kids. And so For some reason, I assumed that that meant that this aunt was going to tell the whole family about this finding out that sister that had passed away had a baby years ago that nobody knew about for some reason. And that was my bad. That was my mistake. I assumed that this was a big deal and that she had told everybody else in the family. And that's not what happened. And that's okay. But I continued to reach out to other people in the family. A couple of cousins I was able to find on Facebook, and a couple of other people in the immediate family, and the other aunt and the other uncle. I kept attempting to reach out to them, and I didn't get anything back. So communication, I think that's what I'm encouraging here, is communication is the key. I kept trying to reach out to these other family members, thinking that they knew what the situation was and that they'd already been told this news, and they had not. So they didn't know that somebody, hey, there's this crazy lady. She's going to reach out and ask you if you're her uncle or her aunt. That never happened, and that's okay. So with each new person that I was contacting, and it took quite a while, it was like having to explain the whole story all over again. And then so finally, when I started to realize that this is what was going on, I did make a video, like a hello video, and I created it at Christmas time, and I sent it out to all of the family members. And I was like, hi, Merry Christmas. If by now you've heard that you have a weird cousin that lives across the state that you never knew about. And it was a huge surprise to very many people in the family, because they had not heard about the story, and they were shocked and surprised, and it started all over again. Disbelief. Is this a scam? Is this what's going on? And I did get a little bit of hate for that. And it was like, who the hell are you? And why are you sending our family this video? So yeah, I learned a lot about this process, and that you should never rely on anyone else's communication but your own. And that has been a big thing to me. So this process actually took 2 years, from the time that I met my biological aunt until most recently, when I'm just still starting to contact some of the other aunts, uncles, and cousins. It has been 2 years. It's been an extremely slow and tedious process because of a couple reasons. I feel like I'm doing it right, slowly. And by that, it's because I have really been trying to work on my own processing of all of this, slowly, for one thing. And I just want to be able to create new relationships and things correctly the first time, and then be able to maintain them, and work on, because all relationships are work, aren't they? Whether it's with a cousin, an aunt, an uncle, a brother, a mom, a dad, whoever it is, your relationship with other people, it all takes work, and it's worth the work that you put into it, but can be a lot. And imagine going from none to suddenly 20 or 30 people, brand new people, and you want to foster relationships with each of them in a good and healthy and productive way, and make it into, it's up to both people, right? Do you want to make this how close of a relationship do you want this to be? Do you want this to be someone you say hi to at Christmas or is this someone that you chat with every other day? So that's been very happy. It's been slow and tedious, and it's because I want to do it correctly that I have moved and processed this so slowly. And I've also had my own journey of therapy to go along with this, because it's so important to me that I don't want to screw it up. And that's why I went. And that's why I went and talked about it with other people. And that's why I've done a lot of recommended reading. And that's why I've done a lot of processing is because it is so important to me now. And I am here to tell you that the last year has been pretty incredible. 2 years, incredible, very meaningful things, and very, it blows my mind the amount of information that I'm learning from people that want to share with me. And it is, um, if I had to stop now and not foster any other relationship with these people, the amount of stuff that I have learned by now is enough to fill my heart, if that makes sense. I'm very, very happy with the stuff that I've learned. It puts me at peace quite a bit. And now I think moving forward, the next questions are just like, how much more? How much more do I want to learn? How much more do I want to keep in contact and have these relationships like I was talking about? The answer to that is so far so good. I'm doing really good with that, and it's going well. Um, and I can see that it's going to be at different levels with different people so far that I've been able to meet or contact, and that's okay. They're not obligated to have me in their life in any form other than what they want as well. It goes both ways. But I'm looking forward to meeting a lot of them, very much so. So let's go back. Let's go back for just a second, because I'm going to set us up for next week, and hopefully that goes well. So next week, I want to talk to you about the most amazing, amazing thing that happened through these conversations. Right? I found the aunt on social media. I found the pictures. I found the gravesite. And I was on the phone, and I was speaking with the biological aunt, my biological mother's sister. And that just blew me away by itself. I was like, wow. Wow. After all this time, here's someone who is this sister. She's my aunt. She's my biological aunt. And that's what I've referred to her as the whole time. So as I was speaking to this biological aunt, and she didn't realize this. I want to show you something else that I have. Oh, if I have it. Did I put it in here? No, I guess I didn't put it in here. This is my book that I am keeping, the story. And my aunt was throwing names, and Bobby and John and Bill and Bob, and she was throwing these names out there so fast and telling me about these people that I've never met, never heard of before. I had an old envelope and I was writing down. I was writing. I was taking notes as she was telling me about all these people that I needed to meet, and who I needed to contact next, and who I wanted to speak to, and who had old pictures, and who has all these great stories, and who can tell me about her dog, and these funny little things. And she said, and I don't want to use the real names of people on here just for privacy and stuff like that. So I've got to think of a good name. I've got one. I think I've already got one. She started to talk about Bobby. Use that name because that's a good one. So I have also my best friend, his name Bobby. And so she said, you've got to talk to Bobby. We're not really sure where she is or what's going on right now. And I was like, oh, who's that? And she says, well, you have a sister and a brother. And no, I didn't know that. Why she assumed I knew that, I will never figure out. It was just one of those funny little things. She's like, oh, well, yeah, you've got a half sister and a half brother, and they were born in this year, and this blew me out of the water. So all of a sudden, there was an urgency. There was an urgency. I needed to find my sister immediately. And so that's what I did next. And I think I'll talk about that next week, subject to change, because I'm not sure how much of that I want to share. It's really, really personal, and it's really, really good. But yeah, that's the episode that'll make me cry for sure, because that was such a blessing in my life. I will never have it. Whatever I did, I've got no bad feelings, because it led me to the discovery of my sister. So, and she's amazing. Just wait till you hear that story. So, yeah. Anyway, that episode went over. I'm a little bit over the amount of time that I usually do my videos, and I feel okay with that. I hope that's okay with you guys too. This was kind of a long one and a big one and an important one. And so, like I say, if you are on this journey yourself, or maybe you have been reached out to by someone like myself, who's on this journey, I hope that gives just a little bit of an insight as to some of the feelings that are associated with that, and some of the problems and some of the things that can go along. Um, if you feel like you're ready to reach out to someone, like, oh boy, that's a really, really tough one, because I'll tell you what, that knee jerk instinct to, I found somebody, I gotta contact him right now. Boy, that's a hard one to get over. Um, and in many cases, I figure that it would be very, very, very difficult to intercept that and say, hold the phone, time out. Before you reach out to this person, you should think about this, this, and this. So maybe this is information that you need beforehand, or maybe you have a friend, or someone who is at risk for this. um, Send them my way, because I sure do have a lot of sympathy for people that are going through that process, and I sure do have a lot to say that may or may not make things better for them. Communication is going to be key. You have to be deliberate. You have to be, you've got to have all your ducks in a row. You've got to have everything to back up your claims. You have to have a good attitude about it. You have to approach people in a way that they're not going to get offended or upset. And you also have to keep in mind that you could be reaching out to people who may already know but don't want to talk about it. And also, I mean, there's a whole world of possibilities with that, but I sure would love to talk with anybody about it. That if you have any more questions or want some pointers, tell me about your own situation, and I would be glad to help you to decide the correct way to reach out, or even how to prepare for this step. If you're not quite to this step yet, but you feel like it's going to be any day now, let me help you make a plan. I will be a finding planner, something like that. It's just, I've learned so much through this experience and through my therapy and everything else that I've been through to be okay with this situation, that I feel like I could be of help to other people. I'd like to, or I can point you in the direction of finding some good people that like helped me. So there you go. That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I know it was a long one. Again, I'm sorry for that. And I will see you again next time. And I won't say have a great weekend yet, because we're just at the start of our week. It's only Taco Tuesday. So go have a taco. Have a great day. And remember that as you're on this journey, if you're on this journey with me, I'm here for you too. Thanks. Have a great day. Bye. End stream.